Welcome back to Tickets to Travel, the business of travel experiences. Today, we're diving into the world where music, ticketing, and travel collide. And we have two powerhouse guests to break it all down for us. First up, joining us is Natalia Botero, a travel and ticketing operations consultant and the former GM of Shotgun Ticketing in North America. She's got deep expertise in event strategy, ticketing innovations, and the business of getting fans exactly where they need to be for unforgettable experiences. And then get ready, because we have the one, the only Bobby Blast, born in Lagos, Nigeria, raised in Dallas, and now making waves from Seattle. Bobby is not just a DJ, he's a global music curator, festival visionary, and the mastermind behind BlastFest in Seattle, one of the hottest Afrobeats festivals on the West Coast. Bobby's journey is all about traveling for music, creating cultural moments, and turning passion into massive events. From DJing for Burna Boy, Tiwa Savage, and Pitbull to now curating high-energy sets for the Seattle Mariners, Bobby knows exactly what it takes to make an event unforgettable. Today, we're talking the evolution of music tourism, the rise of boutique festivals, and what it really takes to build a movement that brings people together from across the globe. Plus how ticketing, partnerships, and the fan experience play a crucial role in making it all happen. Get ready for an insightful, high-energy conversation with Natalia and Bobby. You don't want to miss this one. And while we have your attention, go to www.blastmusicfest.com to sign up for your exclusive discounts and pre-sale information before the lineup gets released. I tried to get Bobby to tell me who the headliners are, but that is currently on lockdown, so you know it's going to be fire. So don't forget to follow us on all the socials. That's at Tix2TravelPod. And of course, you'll subscribe wherever you get your podcast, because Tickets to Travel starts now. Welcome to Tickets to Travel, the business of travel experiences. I'm your host, Mario Bedouin. I'm joined today with our consultant friend, Natalia Botero. Thanks for coming to the pod, Natalia.
Thank you for having me again, Mario.
We have a very special guest, Bobby Blast, the founder of BlastFest. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
You put together an amazing festival, and this obviously comes back to a passion for music. And what we're finding now is that many people travel for their passions of music, passion for sports. Bobby, do you remember the first concert you ever went to? And did you travel to it?
You could say that I did, but that's up for interpretation. I was an intern at Microsoft, and I had just landed in Seattle at the time. And Future, he's a rapper, and he was coming to Seattle. And I'd never been to a concert before at that point, and I found out that his tickets were $13.
$13?
Wow.
Wait a second. At what point of his career was this? Because I can't imagine.
He had dropped hits at this point. And I'm from the South, right? So I think Southerners look at Future as a much larger rapper than they do globally, but especially on the West Coast. But $13 was unreal. And he already had like really big national hits. I missed the pre-sale because I was an intern, right? And so I went and I stood in line, and I ended up getting my ticket for $8. And I was front row because it was standing room only, because I got there really early to buy the ticket. And I saw Future live for $8 in Seattle, Washington. And again, that was my very first week in Seattle. So I felt like I traveled for it a little bit, but one of the most amazing experiences ever. And you can imagine that concert experience, you could argue, has led me to starting my own festival now.
I'm glad I started with that question, because how old were you then? You were I
was an intern, so I maybe would have been 21.
So you hadn't been to a show prior to being 21? Wow.
No.
Were you a sheltered kid, Bobby? Is that what's happening here?
Oh, I had always been around events and parties, and I had seen celebrities at events, right?
Right.
But to go to an actual concert, you had to have the money for it. And I was a student that was just paying my way through school. It wasn't until after that, when I started making a little bit of Microsoft money, I was like, oh, this is more expendable cash.
Right.
So that was the difference. $8 was a big spend back then.
Wow, that's amazing. You said it yourself. This was the precursor to you creating BlastFest. Was BlastFest your first festival that you worked on, or did you do something prior to?
I had the opportunity to work on an array of large scale events. I had the opportunity first as a Microsoft employee. I had started DJing and Microsoft put me on a few of their larger events. So my first big scale event was Pitt, and I had the opportunity to DJ for him. And that's what showed me the difference between DJing for 300 people and 5,000 people. And that really just blew my mind. And then from Pitbull, I went to Sean Paul and LMI and all these different artists. And I was like, okay, wait, hold on. There's something here. And I really started touring. And when I started touring as a DJ, I had that chance to do the Oakland Arena. And that was for like Too Short and the Wu-Tang Clan. And that was just, again, unreal. That was 40,000 people. That was Nas's 25th anniversary for Illmatic, right? Like, I really saw how big this thing could get. And I was like, why am I doing this all over the world and I can't do it where I live in Seattle? And that just focused me back down to how do I create something like that here? And thus BlastFest is.
Bobby, that you're explaining kind of your exposure to events as you work in Microsoft. Like, would love to learn, okay, you figure out why can I do this in the place that I live? Then how did you figure out what need? Well, like what type of content, what music what type of event you could produce that would actually sell tickets?
I think, again, initially I started off doing smaller events. So I started throwing events in Seattle in 2016. And so from 2016 until the pandemic in 2020, I was essentially just becoming a social engineer. I wanted to see what made people move, what made them buy tickets, what made them slow to buy tickets versus quick to buy tickets, all those sort of things. And again, being born and raised in Lagos, Nigeria, Afrobeats, I was watching it emerge, and the pandemic really shot that through the roof. So there's now a new niche. I didn't want to bring hip hop because there were already hip hop artists coming. I didn't want to do R&B or pop because there was no shortage of that. So I wanted to definitely solve an issue. And once I figured out how to solve the issue and use my previous experience in the event space to figure out what that would look like, plus a couple things here and there for funding, I was able to make something really tangible come to life in 2023.
You find the content that you can sell tickets for. It's a big event. It's a big risk. So how did you decide to pull the trigger for your first edition?
Yeah, I've always been told if you're going to do a scare, I'd rather do it, fail, and know that I tried than to live not having done it at all. So I got to a point where I felt like I had enough funding. I wasn't using anybody else's money. So if at the end of the day it didn't work out, I was the only person that was going to hurt financially. I felt okay to take the risk. Again, it was calculated nonetheless, right? And I prayed a lot of days to make sure that it was going to work out the way it was going to. But as far as what it meant to really calculate the risks, how many people in Seattle listen to this genre? How many people follow my brand? So how many do I think will actually travel in for this? How much is my overhead? How much do these artists cost? Who's actually going to sell tickets, right? Asking myself all those questions and then making the best calculated risk to not overspend, right? Which I think we see all the time. You could put together the most amazing lineup and still fall flat, right? So to keep things smart, but simultaneously make sure that we're doing whatever it took to bring out people from Vancouver, from Portland, the nearby areas to really make something amazing here in the city of Seattle.
Yeah, you're really operating in a cultural niche in the Northwest.
Yes.
Do you find that because of your branding and because of your sort of fame, I guess, with the DJing, are you bringing a lot of fans from other markets? You mentioned it briefly more on the Northwest side, but how are you marketing tickets to others and how are you getting them to the venue in Seattle?
1,000% we're bringing people in from everywhere now. In year one, we saw folks coming in from just on the other side of the pond. We saw London, we saw Paris, right? Year two, now we're really starting to see the spread, right? We're able to see folks coming in from Jamaica. We're able to see folks coming in from Hawaii. We're really starting to push things a bit further. And I feel, and the data supports the idea that we're definitely making a cultural shift in Seattle. Seattle as a city or as a metroplex, it's only about 7% African-American. Afrobeats, holistically, you could say it's probably like 95% listened to by African-Americans. So if we're only reaching 7% of the audience, we can never be a successful festival. Like being in Seattle historically wouldn't actually set us up to win. But because so many people are traveling in and so many people are interested in the neighboring states, that actually gives us a really good fighting chance. And there's a huge concentration of Africans in the United States on the eastern seaboard and in the South, not so much on the West. But if you pull us all together, we become a pretty dense population. And so we target heavily in LA, target heavily in San Diego, Las Vegas, Salt Lake City, areas that are just generally overlooked by large media. And we have the opportunity here to, again, put together all the little dogs to make something really big and really special happen.
That's amazing that you're shifting culture in Seattle to a certain degree. You mentioned it earlier. The lineup is key to attracting the right fans to get there. What other cultural elements have you put into BlastFest that would make it a little bit different than your typical music festival?
I think there's a lot of cultural elements, right? Number one, I think the most important thing is that it's owned by an African. We're the only festival that's solely and 100% owned by just us. And I think that driving factor makes a big difference because it keeps us authenticity. When we talk about like food vendors and the business vendors that we have on site, those are all also primarily African owned, right? And the reason for that is because we want to amplify the authenticity of these companies. So you think about going back to impact, the smallest business saw a 450% increase in their daily average sales. So you look at the impact that we're making in the city, where you look at the impact that we're making in our communities and these small businesses, we're growing it. But let's talk about what makes the festival different. It's intimate. It's a boutique festival. So you're not lost in a crowd of 40,000, although those have their experiences and there's places for that. This is, you're coming here to experience just high quality music with 7,500 other Afrobeats lovers. Our theme is let's go to the moon. Let's transport somewhere that you haven't been before. And so the reason I feel like BlastFest is successful in terms of reaching out to the individual people is because we're collectively taking a trip together. As we brand it, as we market it, even as people arrive, the whole feels like, yes, you've come to Seattle or you're in Seattle, but quite honestly, as soon as you enter this campus, we're all hopping on this spaceship together and going somewhere different. And I think that collective feeling and the way that theme resonates with the entire audience has made it like more of an experience than a concert or a festival. It's how does it make you feel? Not so much who did I get to see.
The cultural elements creates this shared experience. Doesn't matter where you're from. You're coming to Seattle. And what I'm getting at too is that you're probably going to tour this, right? Is this the thought? Or are you purely a Seattle festival?
Without speaking too much in the future, you never know what can happen or how things can go. But I do think that there's a world where BlastFest is multiplanetary. As we're talking about let's going to the moon, I think there's other places that we can eventually go. But in the immediate future, similar to how we got started, I want to learn and really social engineer this thing here in Seattle to make sure we're doing it right, especially at scale, and really impacting the people in the way that they're supposed to. But there are opportunities in the future, I think, for us to expand our footprint.
I want to take a step back, and you, Bobby, walked us through how you're targeting event attendees from other parts of the world. I think you're doing an amazing job at customer retention, because people that went to the first year want to go back to the second year. And that's very hard in our space. So I would love to understand, what are you doing to get people back?
So let me tell you what we didn't do, and then we can talk from there. So for example, year one, we had a very terrible VIP experience, right? We thought we designed the place to optimize VIP. We gave VIP a full rooftop view. They were far in the back, so they had so much space and they had their own bars. And all VIP told us is that they just wanted clearer access to the artists. They wanted to be closer. They wanted to be able to feel the sweat from the artists. Like they felt like they had the most premium view, right? And we just completely missed the boat. So when we talk about what customer retention looks like, we gave every single person that bought VIP year one 50% off of the previous year's ticket for year two. So come at half off of what you paid last year. Buy a ticket this year, right? And tell us if we did better.
It's 50% off, but better view, better experience.
We changed everything. We changed everything completely, right? And Natalia hated me for it because We weren't going
This,
to hit
this is where the question's coming from. She's like, remember that project we did?
I was sold, hey, please, we have to make it right. I believe beyond anything, goodwill is important. And I think that ends up paying dividends in ways that immediate cash can't. And I think that's what leads a lot of people to come back, just because we do right by everybody. What we say we're going to do is what we do, and we try our best to keep it that way in everything.
I agree. And I think you were super intentional when you and I worked together during my time at Shotgun. You were very intentional when we were setting ticket pricing to make sure that it was competitive, but that it was also accessible for your previous community. We did have disagreements on the VIP section, but you did ultimately what was best for your brand and win your customers' trust and keep them coming back year after year.
Elevate your travel business with Victory Live, the platform featuring $6 billion in professional sports, concerts, festivals, and theater inventory, including Broadway hits, Las Vegas shows, and top events like Coachella and the Super Bowl. With global content sourced directly from rights holders or approved ticket brokers, Victory Live offers net rates, seamless API connectivity, white label solutions, and a B2B portal for travel agents. Visit victorylive.com for more information and tell them that the Tickets to Travel podcast sent you. You brought up an interesting term, boutique festival.
Yeah.
7,500 people, still very boutique. What else creates that experience to make sure that it's consistent year after year? If someone is coming into the experience, what can they look for? What can they expect?
If someone is coming into the experience, I think, again, number one, my hope and my desire and what I hope to hear always is we're just met by the friendliest people, right? The first hour and a half of my day on that day is talking with security, like doing a full debrief. And generally, I should not be the one doing that. I think there's other things that I should be solving, but it's like, hey, let's quickly touch base on what I'm expecting from you and how you do or do not get paid today. If I hear that you're yelling at someone, if I hear that you're screaming at people while they're showing up, you're telling people aggressively to get in line, we have an issue. Because to me, I feel like that's where the experience starts, right? If I hear a food vendor is not being kind, or if I hear some people that are meant to be wayfinders or volunteers aren't being kind, again, those are where the issues start. So I try my best to really pick people and drill into the managers or the leaders. This is what's of utmost importance to me. You don't get that experience at the 40,000 people festival because that's just herding crowds. I think the second thing about making this a boutique experience is we find ways to make sure you're touching the brand. I think it's so important to walk away with something tangible. So even if you got the most inexpensive ticket, you're still leaving the festival with something in your hand that will remind you of BlastFest, right? And then all the way up to the people that got the most expensive ticket, we're giving you multiple things to remind you of what you experienced when we all went to the moon collectively. Again, when you think of these festivals, a lot of things are pay to play. Whereas BlastFest wants to give away as much because we feel like there's Gary V. He talked about this marketing concept of jab hook. And the entire idea behind it is you can't just keep trying to get money from people. As some they become exhausted, you jab. Those are the free things that you give. So we're doing events year round, jabbing away. Hey, here's a free thing. Here's a free thing. Here's a free thing. Here's a free thing. And then even at the festival, here's a free thing. Here's a free thing. Here's a free thing. And then you get into that one line that catches you unaware and you have to pay for it, but you don't feel bad. That's the hook because we've been giving so much away throughout the entire year that, oh, what's the extra $50 in this line? That's the idea to me. When I think about being a good festival and really making an impact to the limited audience that we have, how can we best make them feel important and not feel like they're being hit over the head and dimed and nickeled all the time, all while still being able to turn a profit and make something tangible.
That's brilliant. You're providing value throughout the relationship, whether it be over the course of the year or during the actual event, to where it makes it a little bit easier to cough up a few bucks or to upgrade into VIP.
I think I was just wanting to hear Bobby's thoughts about having that same strategy when people come from multiple parts of the world to come to BlastFest itself. So yes, we talked about the experience starts when you're in the security line, but what about the people that are flying from Jamaica? How are you giving those extra jabs as soon as someone lands from the airport? What are you doing to make that experience really unique?
So let's even talk about it from the booking. So now we're letting everyone know, hey, if you're flying to Seattle, just fly on Alaska Airlines. We're going to give you a discount. We're running different promos on our Instagram page. Hey, do this and we'll give you a $250 gift card to buy your flight. We're doing things to lower those barriers. We're making the travel easier. And the hope is the people that are flying from furthest that'll win. And the entire idea behind that, again, is like, wow, they're helping us come to the festival. They're giving us opportunity to come to the festival. Once they arrive, we're trying to work with Expedia to make sure that hotel prices aren't too expensive or Vrbo prices aren't too expensive. We're trying our best to make sure we're dropping all these different expenses that people have to take on to make sure that they're able to enjoy themselves without feeling like they're going into debt, right? And then again, if you've now traveled, you've come all this way, what else can we do for you? How else can we make this experience over the top? Our parties aren't expensive. The surrounding events around the festival. You would have already had your ticket to the festival. And depending on what ticket tier you get, you probably already get free drinks. You probably already get discounted food. We're trying our best to give you Uber codes and things of that nature. We work with a lot of different partners to make sure we're keeping the prices as low as possible and hopefully even giving you discounts on top of the discounted prices. So extra promotions just to make sure you don't feel like you've just spent a bunch of money for little in return. We want to over deliver everything that we promise.
I love that. I love how intentional you are about thinking about all the little steps that takes from booking a flight to getting to your hotel in an Uber to what are you doing the night before the concert or the festival to have people entertained. And apart from the dollar that you save or the few dollars, it's more the intention behind it.
Again, I think goodwill goes very, very far. In my heart, it's not, I'm not doing goodwill for a marketing purpose or anything like that. It's genuinely, if I were in this position, if I wanted to see these artists and the closest place to me to see these artists was 600 miles away or whatever it may be, and they did all of these different things to make it easier for me to see them, of course I'm going. What's the alternative? We see what's happening with Ticketmaster now. They're still buying tickets, but they're not happy about it. And that, I think that energy translates to when they show up, like, can't believe I had to spend all this money. I'm going to make the most of it. I'm going to get it. Either I'll get a lot of drinks to really make it fun, or that could also cause other issues, or you go begrudgingly. There's all sorts of other issues that come along with that. But again, if it's a peaceful experience from the time that you go to our website, then the hope is that it saves that way to the time that you.
Now, you mentioned the T word, Ticketmaster. They did a study through the Oxford Economic Forum, and the stat was that it didn't matter what type of event it was. Could be a music festival, concert, sports event. At least 25% of that audience is traveling over 100 miles, which would then qualify you for an overnight stay, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about that, and this being more of a B2B travel ticketing podcast, as a promoter of a festival that's obviously going to gain more and more traction over the years, what are some of the things that a ticketing company should understand about working with someone like yourself? And then again, maybe a hotel or someone on the travel side to make life a lot easier so that they're attracting your audience and allowing you to develop that relationship going forward every year.
From a ticketing perspective, you have to give Ticketmaster credit where credit is due. They figured this space out, and it's just unfortunate that their brand isn't necessarily associated with the happiest of memories, right? From the pre-sale experience to the fees. But again, you need fees to run the things that they're running. If there was a way to lower them, that would be awesome. I can't necessarily fault them. They have a business to run, and that's how they've decided to run it. But I do think there's space on the hotel side. I think hotels make impossible barriers to overcome. From being a IATA certified travel agent, come on, I could possibly be putting 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people in your building, and you're worried about how I'm doing it. Like it would be awesome if we could just quickly make links or some sort of contractual obligations. with the larger brands. And when I say the larger, I'm talking about the international brands. So that's Marriott, Hyatt, IHG, as opposed to having to go unit to unit, building by building, and discuss with each individual general manager to see what they're willing to offer. It would be awesome if we could work at a much higher level, which Airbnb and Vrbo give us the opportunity to. But obviously there's other experiences that may come along with going that route as opposed to the hotel route. But I say that to say, I think hotels are going to start seeing more competition in that regards if they don't become more lenient or flexible.
It's funny you mentioned that. Working with hotels for a number of years, it is so hard to get a discount code from a Hilton.
Yeah.
Or a working link in that less than 24 hours.
Marriott, same thing. What ends up happening, just so that people who are listening understands, Bob, you'll go talk to a hotel that's adjacent to your venue. You'll say, hey, we're coming in during these dates. We'd like a discount code of some type. That revenue manager has to go and get approvals up the chain to their central reservation system through corporate. And they're like, yeah, we could do that. It's probably going to take about 2 to 3 months for us to generate the link. And then you're like, wait a second, we're going to go on sale like tomorrow. So why does that make sense? You're just going to have to find someone else who has access to our inventory, which we're all nodding our head because we've seen it. We've done it a number of times. And I guess that's where I was getting at with the question is if they can make those processes easier, it would probably help events scale that business and being able to move quicker in terms of, because this is one thing I appreciate about the entertainment side or the ticketing and promotion side is that there's hustle. Promoters like yourself, anybody who's on the ticketing side is there's a bit of hustle. You have to, if Beyonce says, hey, we're going to go on sale in a week, there are people at Ticketmaster breaking their backs to make sure that every seat is loaded into the system.
Yeah.
Hotels, they don't really do that. They're just waiting for the business to come, and then they push you into one channel against one rate and then another channel that's going to be contracted because you're taking risk on this block of rooms or whatever it might be. And so it was really interesting to hear you say that because I think that there's a little bit of a lack of hustle sometimes, and the cultures, much like the systems, don't really match the energy.
Yeah. Yeah. You already know the reality of it. There's no real, the fact of the matter is hotels know that they're indispensable. And I think Airbnb gave them a little bit of a run for their money for some time, but hotels know the truth behind that. And so because they feel indispensable, they're not really willing to play fair. Whereas ticketing companies, on the other hand, I think they're losing a lot of business to these small and upcoming ticket providers. Obviously, different types of business, but business nonetheless. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity for a ticket company to get swept by another one, just if they're not on their P's and Q's. Whereas hotels, that threat isn't imminent yet. I think there's a possibility that it might be one day, but in the next 5 years, I just don't see how.
Bobby, said something super interesting when we were talking about festival logistics. And you said, when someone comes to BlastFest, their experience starts at the security line.
Yes.
And I actually just want to open this up because I'm not sure if I agree with you necessarily. I think the customer experience starts when you're booking a ticket, when you're buying your ticket.
Yes.
There's a ton of ticketing companies. Every day there's a new one. One goes out, is no longer active. How do you make that decision so that your customer journey from the beginning starts off the right foot?
Yeah, fully agree with you. And yeah, we're on the same page. From the time that you touch the website, I think that's where the clock starts ticking. The ticketing experience is important. And I think, again, you and I met in the ticketing space, like one of the most important things is how committed is that ticketing partner to making sure your event is a success? What are you willing to do to make sure this event is a success? We've used several ticketing providers prior to landing on Shotgun, and I'll give Shotgun their shout out. They've done an amazing job for me. But prior to them, people weren't committed to our event at all. We were just another event for them. And I think that also reflected in the line experience. I think that also reflected in the experience in chargebacks. Whereas when you have a team that is committed to making something work and committed to solving the issues, such as Shotgun was in this previous year, everything else worked perfectly. The line went smoother. Things that needed to change in the line were easily being able to be shifted because Shotgun was on site. They were there. They were present. But yeah, even from the time of purchasing the ticket, they made it easy. Although one of the pros and cons of working with a new company is there's a lot of area to make updates, a lot of area to improve features, a lot of areas to really help them get real world, real time experience, right? As opposed to ideations. Whereas if you work with the more established ones, they have all those features sorted out already. So there is a give and a take, but I'd much rather go on the journey with someone and arrive together than feel like I'm the least important piece of a more established company.
When you and I met, you were shopping around for ticketing companies, as you should. If you could design any feature for any ticketing company or for your next provider, what would that be and why?
I wish ticketing platforms were robust enough to do targeted marketing on my behalf through TikTok, Instagram, Spotify, like the different channels, without me needing to hire a third party to run that. Because we're pulling the data from the ticketing companies. Like we're pulling the pixel from the ticketing companies, and yet we still have to pump it through something else. Whereas in theory, because we're pulling it all from you, there should be the back end to solve that.
So let me just clarify, not an in-house marketing person from that ticketing company, but having the product itself be able to do targeted ads based on the data that the ticketing provider is already producing.
Yeah. Or to make it a bit simpler, provide me the data points, right? So maybe let's use Shotgun because that's what I'm using right now. If Shotgun could say, hey, we believe based off of the current sales that you've made so far, you need to target this audience to do this thing in Facebook. And then on Google, you need to do this and this, right? Like if it could give me very specific audiences to target, that would be awesome based off of purchase history.
And that is very possible today with AI, right? It's very possible.
Someone just has to build it.
Exactly. So I just gave someone $1 million idea and I spoiled these.
Yes, you did, Bobby. Yes, you did. I think what you're speaking to as well is just distribution in general. When we bring up and I think for the audience, some people may not understand the difference between a festival that's in an open venue where you can pick your own ticketing system versus if it's in an arena or a stadium where you have to use, not all the time, but you have to use the primary system that's there. What we constantly hear on our side is that it's always tech versus distribution. People don't like the big guys as much, but they have undoubtedly the best distribution. It goes up on the main site, people see it. With some of the smaller guys, they have the best tech, but at the same time, not the huge presence on various distribution outlets. And so I think that the marketing piece is very key, finding AI to make that easier to bridge those gaps. But I think it all really comes down to connectivity in a lot of ways to where Ticketmaster, for example, they have a direct connection to TikTok. They have a direct connection to to Facebook and Meta. And I think that's tougher for other ticketing systems to enter because they don't already have the volume. And that's one of the things that we work on here is just to educate anybody in these industries to say that there are possibilities. It's just about making the right types of deals and making it easier for everybody. Because at the end of the day, it's the experience itself that suffers, whether it's you putting on the event or the end user who has to purchase the ticket, or they're ticked off because they didn't know it was happening. Yeah. And so you have to create these various mechanisms to find these audiences. And all you're asking is, help me out here. Help me out in finding the right audiences so that we can have a sellout, we can make a bunch of money, and everyone has the good vibes in general, right? Yeah.
I think it's, as a consumer, I think it's also great when you're targeted for a show that you actually want to go. And with today's excessive content from many different sources, and you don't necessarily know, oh, my favorite DJ will be in town in the next 2 weeks, but out of nowhere, you get an Instagram ad. And as a consumer, that's such a great feeling where you're targeted for the right ad and it converts really well. And you didn't have to do the legwork of going to the artist or going to the the brand of the festival to understand what are the dates, the locations. I think there's a missed opportunity in today's ticketing space to tell promoters, hey, by the way, I think this audience would convert really well, but actually executing that if there's a preset budget to run those ads.
And I think even figuring out what budget looks like is different. And that's a lot of trial and error just over time. But I wish we had the opportunity and I do think this falls under ticketing, to be recommended. Hey, for what you're trying to accomplish, this is how much it's going to take, or this is how we feel like we can optimize budget, whatever it may be. I think there's a lot of ways to really make this a more seamless experience. And I do think it starts with the ticketing company.
When I was at that larger company and they deal with lots of promoters, there's this metric that everyone believed that a promoter existed on, or if they could get a high percentage of this one thing, it was going to be a success. Do you know what that metric is?
No.
Vibes. Curation. How do you measure vibes? And so that's my next question is, you have a feeling people know you and you have curated a lineup. You've curated the food. You've curated the cultural sort of vibes with the security and the wayfinders and all these different people. But how do you quantify that metric of vibes? I know you started off saying it's about kindness, but how does that play into the decisions to create the lineup and to create a better overall experience for your brand?
I think the vibes are, I would argue, and a lot of people would disagree with me, but it's my podcast today.
It's always yours, man.
I would argue that the number one indicator of vibes, the number one, is the artwork. I think your artwork or your event or your concert or your festival, whatever it may be, is the number one indicator of what type of event am I going to receive when I arrive. If you have bad artwork, it's probably not going to go that great, right? Versus if you have an amazing artwork, people already have amazing expectations. Today's going to be a great.
Right.
And again, you talk about the things that precede you. I think that's the number one predecessor of what this event is going to hold. You talk about the vibes of an event. I think people see the artwork before they see the flyer. Then the artwork could lead them to an Instagram page or a social page to want to see more. If you skimp on your artwork, there's a chance people are going to assume you skimped on everything else.
And that was a question that's come up in a couple of these podcasts. Is like, how do you quantify the vibes? Natalia and I worked at a company called Pollen, and there was actually a set of guys who had a formula. They were creating a specific vibe, or they could understand that certain music gave certain points to a vibe. The type of venue, the type of hotel, that's where we came into play here, is like, these were the type of hotels that were going to match the specific vibe. And so I'm curious, do you think, is that something that could be manufactured? Do you think that there is a formula to it? Or do you think that is just exclusively Bobby Blast?
I don't know that there's a formula to it. And I think the biggest indicator of that is I won't partner on most things, right? So if I don't genuinely believe in an idea, or if I don't think that the method to that is successful, I won't partner. If vibes were creatable or manufacturable, I think it would be a lot easier to replicate, duplicate, and recreate. I don't know, but also I'm a one-man team, right? So my knowledge, my experience, my data may not be as strong as, again, for example, a Ticketmaster or a Pollen that might have several data scientists figuring out those exact units of measurement. I think even if they can be manufactured, the best vibes are organic. The best vibes are the naturally occurring ones. And my hope exactly is to remain in that authentic vibe curation space. Because I feel like at the point that we're manufacturing it, it's lost something.
Yes, it's counterproductive to say manufactured vibes, right? Like it doesn't sound right.
Exactly.
So who is your headliner this year?
I'm not talking about that just yet.
Oh, you see how I tried to sneak that in?
We'll be announcing shortly. I'm really excited. Year one, we had Ashake, which was like the hottest up and coming artist in Afrobeats. Then year two, we brought Davido, who is arguably one of the biggest 3 Afrobeats artists ever. And year 3, obviously now we're really starting to cement ourselves as the leading Afrobeats festival of the West. And we're not dropping the ball. I'm really excited. We're going into even a larger lineup. Historically, we've had 5 or 6 artists. This year, we're really increasing that number. So it's going to be a full day of just fun, enjoyment, and traveling to the moon.
Good vibes all around. So
all around.
Maybe we're speaking into the future. You're going to the moon this year. But where would you, in terms of exotic destinations for BlastFest, what would be the dream to put this lineup, put this culture in a specific destination for, let's say it's not just a day, maybe it's an entire weekend. Coachella-esque.
Again, in my heart and my desire, I would love to take it to Nigeria. Nigeria obviously is a waterfront country. There's so much waterfront opportunity there. But again, when we talk about target audience and we talk about what that country needs, I don't know that it's another festival. So that's pie in the sky, what hopefully one day we could do. I think realistically, what we can make happen possibly is like a Dubai or Qatar, countries that are really focused on entertainment right now and really focused on upping their tourism, that also have really amazing facilities and really amazing opportunities for growth. I think if we were to look at leaving the US altogether, I would love to go somewhere like that could really make for an amazing Afrobeats festival somewhere in the desert.
I'm with you on the Dubai one.
Yeah.
There's actually a big travel conference called Arabian Travel Market, so ATM. And this is one of their big initiatives is around event travel. So I think your vision may come a lot sooner. And now I can tell them that I have a promoter who knows the space very well.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I have a serious question about that potential BlastFest in Dubai. Bobby, can I be added to the guest list, please?
You can be added to whatever you want to be added. You be on backstage pass, whatever it is that you want.
There it is.
Oh, great. I was just asking for a guest list, but if I can get backstage.
I think this is about our time here on Tickets to Travel. Thank you, Natalia, of course, for always joining us and providing the color from the ticketing perspective. And Bobby, congrats on all the stuff that you've done. And here's to positive vibes, great vibes at the next BlastFest.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Attention travel and ticketing innovators. Whether you're a startup disrupting the industry or an established company ready to take your distribution strategy to the next level, Expo Travel is your ultimate partner in online travel and ticketing distribution. We specialize in helping businesses of all sizes optimize their operations, expand their reach, and unlock new revenue streams. And for startups looking to grow, we partnered with top venture capital syndicates to help you secure the funding you need to turn bold ideas into thriving businesses. From refining businesses to scaling operations and raising capital, Expo Travel is here to drive your success. Visit Expo Travel today. That's xpotravel.com for a consultation. And let's transform the way the world travels, one innovation at a time. Expo Travel, because the future of travel and ticketing starts with you.